with Yevgeniya Gaber. She's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. She joins us now live from Istanbul. Great to have you on the programme. So much to talk about. How would you describe the status of the fighting right now in Ukraine?
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. Well, obviously, the dynamics on the ground has changed a lot, and now we have a completely different type of the warfare rather than we had during the first periods of the war. Obviously, with the failures on the battlefield, and as one of your reporters mentioned, Russia has turned out to be under-equipped, under-trained, under-prepared for this war in Ukraine. They switched to terrorizing civilians, and I come from Odessa myself, which President Zelensky mentioned today. Yeah. So we don't have electricity. Civilians in Odessa do not have internet connection very often. And of course, heating, which also means that people do not only struggle to survive with minus 10, sometimes minus 5, but also they cannot have their businesses, they cannot work properly because without internet connection and electricity, obviously the whole system gets paralyzed. And one of the reasons for that is, of course, to cause problems and to cause new waves of refugees, which is Russian tactics.
Exactly, that was what I was going to ask you. Do you think Russia's ultimate goal in doing that, in leaving so many parts of the country, and as you said, your home, Odessa, without power? And President Zelensky, as you said, it is very difficult, the situation there in Odessa.
Well, it's a very difficult situation indeed, and I'm based in Odessa just for a couple of days here in Istanbul, so I can tell you that it's not really a nice place to be when it's dark and cold and you cannot get proper water supplies, heat and anything. So basically hospitals, I don't know, schools, anything, it cannot work because we don't have electricity. But one of the reasons why Russia is doing that to undermine Ukrainian resilience, to undermine people's support to Ukrainian government and to press us into negotiations, which is not the case because at this point, obviously, there is nothing to be negotiated when we have still our territories occupied and Ukrainian people are very much resolved and determined in fighting back against the Russian forces in Ukraine.
I want to ask you about diplomacy in a second, but just one thing with regards to what happened in Odessa. There are reports that say that it was they were Iranian-made drones that Russia used. And over the weekend, both the US and the UK, they've expressed concerns about the growing allegiance there between Russia and Iran. How concerning is that?
Exactly. It's important to understand that Ukraine is not fighting back against one country now, which is Russia, but against 3 countries, with Belarus also joining Russian aggression and Iranian drones and generally Iranian military cooperation with Russia. That is an important factor, and especially for air defense, that's a challenge because we have to deal, our air defense systems have to deal simultaneously with Russian missiles, but also with Iranian drones, which is very difficult. And most of the attacks on critical infrastructure and on energy infrastructure, they are also waged with the Iranian drones. For that reason, we are concerned and we call on international community to consider more pressure both on Russia and Iran to stop that.
And what do you think the international community can do with regards to this? Because the G7, they're meeting today. They're considering a 9th round of sanctions. What effect could that have?
Well, what we expect from the international community as Ukrainians, these are threefold. First, we need more weapons, not to protract the conflict, as has been mentioned by one of the speakers, but to actually end this conflict and to protect our infrastructure from further destroyment by Russia, because this is how we try to stick to normal life, and this is how we try to proceed. So for that, we need to defend ourselves, not to attack Russia, but arms supplies are crucial. Second, this is generators, humanitarian assistance, and everything which concerns the resistance of civilians and of our people in this war. But third, this is sanctions, and those are important both against Russia and Iran to cut off the budgets from new revenues and from new money coming in. as well as sanctions against certain sectors to prevent the production of new missiles and new weapons by these countries. Because whatever comes to the budgets of those countries, this is generally turned not into healthcare or education, but into weapons and missiles, which then fall on the heads of Ukrainian civilians.
All right. Thank you so much. We've run out of time. Thank you for your time and your analysis. Yevgeniya Gaber joining us from here in Istanbul, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Appreciate your analysis and time.